Hi, this is Cheryl St.Pierre of Majestic Wire Artworks. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these crystal hoop earrings with matching ear wires. And I've got the ear wire, it's kind of like a bonus. You don't have to use these ear wires. If you don't want to use them, then you just watch the beginning of the video, because I put the ear wires at the end so that you wouldn't have to go through that if you weren't planning on making them. So I've taken, when I made my prototype, I made sure that I made, that it looked good while wearing them, because our ears sit differently. So some people ears sit more outwards and some more forward. You know, it depends how your ears are shaped, depends how your ears were pierced. And so I took the optimum shape to look good on pretty much all ears. So I was very careful with that, and I experimented with that. So I hope you appreciate the effort that I've put into that. And so these look nice from the side. If I tried making, at first I wanted it bigger, wider, but it just didn't sit right on, you know, when it's, if you have an ear that sits outwards. So that's how I got my shape. Anyways, so I'm also trying something new in this video. I've had so many people watch videos on their phones, and then they make the comment that they can't access the description, and so they're asking me in the comments, what was the gauge of wire? So what I've done now is I have it typed up on a piece of paper, and you'll see in the next little bit that you could do a screenshot and you've got everything you need right there. You don't have to listen, it's easy to find, and there's your supplies on the screenshot. There you go. And I want to ask you if you like this video, please share it with others. Share the link in Twitter, Facebook, whichever social media you use. Get my videos out there. It helps my channel grow. And also, I want you to consider joining in my membership to support me. You'll have to be on a computer for that, because I don't think we can access that on the phone. Maybe eventually they'll have it so that you could access it from your phone. But it's the join button that's right beside the subscribe button. And I recommend the package of the retired videos, because eventually that's gonna be the package. You know, that's where most of the videos are gonna be, and it's gonna grow. And that's a nice way of supporting me and keeping my channel open. Thank you, and we'll move on. So let's get going. Okay, for supplies, what you're going to need is 26 3x4 millimeter rondelle crystals, 26 gauge dead soft wire, which in metric, and I'm only going to do the metric here from people in metric. I want you to write it down or take a screenshot of this, and then you can, when I say 26 gauge, that is 0.4 millimeters. And remember that different companies do different measurements. It might be 0.401, but this is what the chart I looked at had. So this is what I printed off. And you can always Google a chart on the internet too to get your different gauges and metric. We need two pieces that are 26 inches long, which is 65 centimeters. So remember, all metric is in the brackets here as well. 18 gauge dead soft wire is 1.02 millimeters in metric. We need two pieces that are 6 inches long, and which is 15 centimeters. Then we need some 20 gauge dead soft wire. That's for making the ear wires. And we need two pieces. And, well, I didn't say the metric, but you can read that. Two pieces, 2 inches long, and they're 5, which is 5 centimeters. Okay, so take your screenshot and then you have it for reference. The reason I'm doing this, just a quick blurb, is because when you're on the phone, it's almost impossible to access the description, and I get so many questions saying, what's the gauge, what's this, what's that? And so I just decided, let's do it this way. Okay, and for tools, you're going there. I've got it ready for you to do a screenshot. That has everything in it. You can do a screenshot there. You're going to need a permanent marker as a mandrel, and I'm actually using a dry erase marker, but it's got the same size as a permanent marker. It's 12 millimeters, excuse me, it's circumference. And you're also going to need a pencil as a mandrel for the ear wires. You're going to need a ruler, a hammer, and you don't need a special hammer. You're just using the flat end of it, so it could be a regular hammer. An anvil, which is just a metal surface to hammer on. Flush cutters, chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, and a file. And the files for the ear wires as well. So if you're not making the ear wires, then you don't need the pencil for the mandrel, and you don't need the file. Okay? So there, and let's begin. Now, I've been debating what to start with first. Should I start with the ear wires, or should I start with the earring itself? And I'm only making one because both of them are exactly the same. I have one made already. This was my prototype, and so let's start with taking, and I'm using all raw copper. I forgot to mention that. In most cases I do. So you're going to need your ruler and your 18 gauge wire, which is a piece that is 6 inches long. And you're going to take your ruler and you're going to measure 3 inches. You know, I recommend that everybody have rulers that has the inches and the metric, because you always need to have, it's always handy to have both. So find the center, give it a slight bend so you know what the center is. Now take your round nose pliers, and I'm going about the middle of my pliers for size. If you wanted it to be pointy, you could do closer to the tip. That's your own preference, but I'm going middle, and then it's approximately the width of the rondelles we're using. You'll have to excuse me, I'm tired, so I'm yawning. Sorry about that, I apologize. I'm just straightening it out a little bit, and I'm going to take one of my rondelles and just, you know, see, you need a little bit of space. I don't want it tight for the wrapping that we're going to be doing, and that's, I'd say that's about perfect. And then you just want the wire to be fairly straight. You would have wanted to definitely have it straightened before you did this, because we want it straight, and you can't straighten as you go. So straighten your wire prior to making your pieces. Now I need you to take your 26 gauge wire. This is the wrapping wire or weaving wire, and we're going to make an anchor of 3 wraps. 1, 2, 3, and the first ones are always messy, so it's actually turned, it looks like 4, but you want it to look like 3, so you can snip off the end that's messy. I'm just going to put them together, and we're going to snip off the end and crimp it in. So take your flush cutters and snip off as close to the 18 gauge wire as possible. And it flew out on me there. And then crimp it in so that I always twist around when I do that. Okay. You want to do it so it doesn't have any pokies. Okay. And now it's gonna move on you as you work, but you want it cinched up. Spread out on me. Okay, at this point, I'm just sliding it close to the end, and it will move back and forth on you. Now I'm gonna introduce the beads one at a time and wrap them on. And we want 12 of the rondelles per earring for this part. And you know, you can change this up with different colors. You can do it as a rainbow effect. So, you know, the variations are almost endless. So this wire is on top of the 2 wires. Okay, like that. I want one to be on top and one to be under, because otherwise it's going to end up where you're on top for both of these and then on the bottom for the next bead and on top, and then your beads are going to go up and down. So I'm actually going to go to the bottom. So we want for each bead one wire to be on top of the 18 gauge and one to be on the bottom, and that way it'll keep the beads as equal as possible. And I want you to now wrap eight wraps. And you want that to be tight, holding that together. Otherwise your bead will end up being loose a bit and it won't be as neat looking. And it can take practice to do it. Now, just to get my 8 wraps. 2, 3. My fingers aren't working. 4, 5, 6. What does it look like? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, one more. Sometimes it looks like 9. You don't want it to look like 9. You want it to look like 8. And now I'm just going to cinch it up. From all directions to look nice and neat. And see, it's at the top again. You ended up being at the top. So then the next one you want on the bottom, on the other side. So it's, I don't know if you understand what I mean by top and bottom. It's on the ending on the top of this wire. And now we want this one to begin at the bottom of the wire. And we want to continue that pattern. So now I'm going to add another bead. Okay, so I'm at the bottom. And 8 wraps again. And I did 8 wraps because 8 wraps end up being approximately the same length as the bead. So I thought that through ahead of time for you. So if you're deciding to put a different type of bead in there, then you would have to figure out how many wraps you would do. How many wraps makes the length of the bead? Because I always encourage being, how many wraps do I have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I always encourage you to do your own thing. Okay, and now that's pretty neat. That one worked out really nice. Tighten it up. And you just continue going back and forth until you have 12 beads on. And then at the end, do 3 wraps to be your anchor again. And I'm not going to make you watch me do this whole thing, so I'm going to pause as I do the work. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back. I've got 12 beads on there, but I haven't wrapped the last wrap. So the last wrap is just 3, and it's for the anchor. 1, 2, and 3. You just visually want to see 3 wraps, and you want them complete. And then I want you to snip off this wire as close as possible. I want you to keep this wire here because we're going to use it for making the ear wires. We're just going to snip that off as close as possible to the 18 gauge wire. Set aside your 28 gauge wire, and we're going to crimp that in as best we can. And you want to make sure the wraps are cinched up. Okay, and then if you've got both of them done now, which I'm hoping you do, so if you haven't, go ahead and do, from this point, you could do your next one. And then I want you to double check all your wraps to make sure they're neat and tight together. And then you push your beads together. Then you take your 2 earring pieces, and you want them to have, you want the beads as close to the top as, which is your choice, but you do want to make sure that they are the same. Okay, so then the next thing you do is we're going to I'm going to guesstimate about 5 millimeters length here. I want 5 millimeters. I want both of them. You can measure yours or eyeball it, whichever works for you, and snip these off. Same length. And the one is going to be taller than the other. I mean, from the wraps. So it's always hard to make them the same. But what we're going to do is take your chain nose pliers and just bend this down so that it touches itself. And you want it to come beside the bead so that the bead actually sticks out. And that'll lock everything into place. See, and mine didn't end up being exactly the same length. It's pretty close, but I just wanted to show you when you're wearing the earrings, you can't tell. The only way you could tell is if you looked at the back, and when you're wearing them, you never see that. So it's almost impossible to get them perfect. This one's better probably than my other one, but I'm just letting you know that it is almost impossible. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your permanent marker, dry erase marker. Now I measured that it was 12 millimeters in circumference, and I did that by wrapping some scrap 20 gauge wire around twice like this, nice and tight. And then I took my ruler and I measured the inside, from inside to inside, and it was 12 millimeters. Okay, that's the circumference of this pen. So hopefully you have one of those on hand. I bought this at the dollar store. So if you have a dollar store, chances are you could find one there. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to start from this end, and you're going to hold that against there with your thumb, and you're going to wrap around until it almost, see this one, it almost touches there, but doesn't quite, because you want a little bit of straightness on the top there. And let's see if I've got a match. Now this one is curved more, and I think I did that manually because on the marker you can't really do it. So I pushed it down just a little. I put my finger in and pushed it down a little bit more to round it out. You just want to make them so they match, and if it's, and that you like it. And if you need to open it up a little bit more, you can. I mean, it's personal preference, as long as they match. So I've got them almost matching. There. So the mandrel gets you the basic shape, and then you perfect it with your fingers, which doesn't really take a lot of work. Okay, so that part's done. That wasn't so bad, was it? Okay. Now to make the ear wires. So you take your 2 inches of 20 gauge wire, you take your round nose pliers, and you're going to have your hammer and anvil handy, but you're going to make your loop at the bottom of the ear wire. And it's a P loop. And that's a P loop because it makes a P. Okay, then the next thing you do is, I don't know if you've seen me make ear wires in other videos, but this part of my round nose pliers is approximately 8 millimeters. I'm going to measure that right in front of you. My stand's getting in the way. It's actually 7 millimeters. Okay, so 7-ish millimeters. That little bit of difference, as long as your 2 ear wires are consistent, isn't going to matter. But I put it against the loop, and then I give a tiny bend. And all this is a place to put the pencil. So your round pencil is your mandrel for your ear wires. Your toolbox should always have a round pencil in it. And you put that pencil in that little bend and you bend it around. And it looks like that. And it's pretty much a standard ear wire. Except for I goofed up because we're trying to make this a little bit different. So you know what I'm going to do? And you might end up doing this too. Is I'm just going to... And we want this work hardened anyways. I'm just going to straighten this out again. And I want to put a bead on it. So that's what's different about this, is it's got a bead on it. So our measurement is going to be a little bit different. So I really want this straight here. Okay. Now I'm going to get that measurement from above that bead and give it that bend of where to put the pencil. I'm going to put the pencil in there, and then I want to carefully make that round bend. Okay, so that's what I want. And at this point, I am going to now make sure that this loop is on the same, well, it was angled off, so I don't know how. Straighten it out. Okay, so you want to straighten it out, and you want to take your anvil and hammer, and you want to make sure that that bead is not on your anvil. So this is going to be a little bit tricky because we don't want to break the bead. Awkward. Okay, and we're going to tap this. And all this is for is to work harden it. And we're only tapping. And you do it as long as it takes to work harden the wire. so, and how you're going to test it is it's going to be stiff. Like it doesn't bend very easily. See, this actually needs more, but I'm going to leave it at that just because I don't want to tap away on you too much, because I can always work hard in it later. And I can always work hard in it with my pliers too by going like this. That works too. And so whichever you find easier. And at this point, I'm going to file this end so that it doesn't have any burrs. And where did I put my file? There it is. I've got a metal file. You could use a nail file, a rough one meant for artificial nails. You know, if you have a nail clipper that has a file on it, that file works too. It's just a little bit awkward at times. Even the metal files that you find in I would recommend metal ones that are in what nail care kits. You know, the metal nail files. Those work great too. You know, some people that don't have snips, flush cutters, I've seen people use nail clippers for that. I don't recommend that. You wouldn't be able to use it on an 18 gauge wire for sure. Okay, I think I've got it good. Okay, from this point, now we are going to take your round nose pliers and put it at the largest part of the pliers that you can get at, because the bead's in the way, so it's not quite, and that's good enough. You've got the bead squished down to the loop there, and we're going to push that forward so that it has that look. Okay, so it's got that bend. Now we're going to take your pencil in there and bend this so that it's parallel with the other wire. So that, take the pencil out so that these two wires are parallel. And I don't have it quite parallel, so I'm going to fix that. Okay, if you wanted to, you could hammer again at this point. I'm not going to do that, torture you through that. You want to make sure that your loop is straight. Mine went off a little bit, not bad. Okay, now the next step is we are going to put on the coil. And you see I have 5 wraps on this one. And we're going to actually wrap it around this part and then slide it down. So you're going to take your scrap wire, the 26 gauge wire, and you're going to do 5 wraps. And you might want to do 6 wraps and then unwrap the one just to have it neater looking. 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I'm going to unwrap this one because it was kind of messy looking. And I'm going to cinch those together. Whoops, sorry. So from all sides, it's nice and tight together. And now I'm going to snip off both ends. And we're gonna crimp the wire in, and I'm just tapping as I go along. And you want it nice as you can get, nice and tight, close to the wire. You see that one's still sticking out a little bit, so that means I need to do a little bit more work. Okay, now I'm just going to take this and slide it along, and I'm going to hold on to my ear wire with my pliers to just give me strength to do it. Otherwise, it's just going to slide out of my fingers. Push it down, and what it's going to do is it's going to lock the bead in place with that so that it can't come off. And I see that it came apart a little bit there. I'm just going to push that down. Okay, so that part of the ear wire is done. Doesn't that look nice? Okay, so the next step is just to do your last bottom bend. You just don't have to do that. I just think they look nice with that. And that ear wire is done. Put it on the earring. Make sure everything's straight. And it is done. Isn't that pretty? And there's the pair. And they're hanging straight. And if one is not matching quite as well with the beads, you can just easily push them up, slide them up, and make them match. So it went off just a little bit. And now they match. Okay, well, there we go. Thank you for joining me in this video. Please share my videos with others. And I'd love it if you could recommend me to others. Please comment. And I'd like to say God bless to all of you. Stay safe. And we'll